picture Bali.
Yeah.
Just like close your eyes for a second and bring up that image in your head.
Right, the classic postcard view.
Exactly. You're probably seeing like backpackers wandering through rice paddies, the whole eat, pray, love aesthetic, right? Cheap beach huts, maybe some Australian families taking a 2-week holiday to drink cheap beers by a hotel pool.
Yeah, that's the Bali everyone remembers.
Right. But I want you to take that postcard image and just completely throw it in the trash. Because today, in 2026, a premium one-bedroom apartment on this island is commanding $3,500 a square meter.
Which is astronomical.
It's wild.
Yeah,
The CEO of OpenAI literally has a 10-year residency visa. And the island has fundamentally mutated from this cheap, transient vacation getaway into a hyper-financialized, data-driven vault for global wealth.
It really is a complete structural paradigm shift. I mean, we are witnessing a geographic landscape actively rewriting its own DNA. Bali is no longer just a place you visit for a fortnight to get a tan, It has evolved into a full-blown lifestyle residency market.
Right.
And that transition, it changes absolutely everything about how money, how architecture, and frankly, how humanity operates on the island.
Which is the exact mission of our deep dive today. We are unpacking how a tropical island transformed into this global high-end asset market. What this means for the future of international real estate, and this is the crazy part, how the entire concept of a hometown is being disrupted for you and me.
It's a huge topic.
It is.
Right.
And to do this, we are pulling from a massive stack of sources today. We've got Knight Frank's 2026 Asia-Pacific Real Estate Outlook. We have deep dive yield data from Investland Bali and the Copio Development Group.
Incredible data in those, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Plus, we're looking at comparative economic studies from Asia Lifestyle magazine, a really thorough breakdown of Indonesia's Golden Visa framework, and even an academic study on contextual green building sustainability.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal data set because it forces you to look at the island not as a travel brochure, but as a complex economic machine.
Right, pulling back the curtain.
Exactly. When you aggregate the macroeconomics, the new visa laws, the granular real estate yields, and even the local zoning regulations, a very clear thesis emerges for the listener. Global wealth is no longer simply buying traditional homes in, say, London or New York just to live in. Capital is moving into what we can conceptualize as distributed luxury living cities.
Distributed luxury living cities. I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
And Bali is really the prototype here. But to understand how we got here, we have to start with the sheer volume of the macro data, because it's staggering.
It really is.
In 2025, Bali processed 7.05 million international tourists. That's a 9.7% jump from the previous year.
Yeah.
But if you dig into the demographics, like our sources did, a massive pivot is happening.
A total rewiring of the visitor profile.
Yeah. The growth isn't coming from the traditional Australian or European backpacker crowds anymore. There's an explosive influx of Chinese, South Korean, and Japanese visitors. And those specific demographics are growing at nearly 20% year over year.
And that 20% surge from Asian markets, that is the first major domino falling. Because historically, Bali's tourism was incredibly cyclical, right? It was tied heavily to Southern Hemisphere school holidays or European winter escapes.
Right, so you'd have these crazy busy months and then totally dead periods.
Exactly. Massive peaks and brutal low seasons. But the rising middle and upper middle classes from East Asia, they're smoothing out that demand curve. They are bringing year-round, sustained capital influx.
Which changes the local economy completely.
It does. But, the transient tourists, people arriving for a week or two, they are really just the surface layer. They're the noise. The actual signal, the real story we need to look at, is the people who arrive and then just refuse to leave.
Yes, the institutionalization of long-term residency. And this is where the Indonesian government pulled off, frankly, a masterful strategic pivot.
Oh, 100%.
They looked at the congestion, the cheap tourism, and realized they didn't just want sheer volume anymore. They wanted intellectual capital, and they wanted high net worth individuals.
They engineered a deliberate policy shift. They moved from an immigration enforcement model, which is designed to, police borders and tightly control short stays, to an investment facilitation model.
Right, like flipping a switch from keeping people out to inviting the money in.
Exactly. They essentially asked, how do we roll out the red carpet for global liquidity? And the answer was the Golden Visa framework, which really fully matured in the last couple of years.
And the mechanics of these visas, They're fascinating because they filter exactly who gets to stay. Like, take the E28B visa, for example. This isn't something you just apply for online for $50.
No, definitely not.
To get this 5-year residency, you have to commit $2.5 million to establish a foreign investment company in Indonesia, what's locally known as a PT-PMA.
Yeah.
So you are forcing foreigners to inject corporate-level capital directly into the local banking system.
And if you want a 10-year runway, or if you're a corporate entity, those financial thresholds scale up dramatically. But the Indonesian government understood something crucial here. Capital isn't just fiat currency, right? It's also human potential.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, and that's where the E33A and E33B global talent visas come into play. Granting one of the very first 10-year golden visas to Sam Altman was just a brilliant piece of geopolitical marketing.
And it's the ultimate signaling move.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hand the keys to the island to the guy running the most important AI company on Earth, you're sending a flare up to the entire Silicon Valley ecosystem.
Absolutely.
You are telling the global tech community, hey, bring your laptops, bring your equity, we are open for business. And then you add in the E33G remote worker visa, which is a legitimate above-board pathway for digital nomads, and the silver hair visa for wealthy retirees. You end up with a completely new demographic foundation.
You're capturing the entire life cycle of wealth, really. You've got the young startup founder bootstrapping on the remote worker visa, then the established tech executive on the global talent visa, the institutional investor using the PT-PMA, and finally, the retired millionaire on the silver hair visa.
It's a funnel.
It is. It's a highly engineered human capital funnel.
I look at this and I just see a software upgrade. Like Bali 1.0 is a holiday destination. Bali 2.0 is a lifestyle deployment. But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
A lot of people looking at this might assume this is just like a post-COVID remote work hangover, you know?
Yeah.
Is this just a temporary bubble fueled by people who realized they didn't have to go back to their cubicles in 2022? Or are we looking at a permanent structural shift in the global economy?
That is the critical question. And the Knight Frank 2026 Asia-Pacific report absolutely buries that temporary hangover theory.
Really? Just buries it.
Completely. If this were just a fleeting trend, the underlying economic foundation just wouldn't be able to support the massive infrastructure being poured into the island. I mean, the APAC region as a whole is projecting a structural 4.1% GDP growth in 2026. And Indonesia itself, it's churning at a highly robust 5.1% growth rate.
And actually, the Republic of Indonesia's own macroeconomic presentation book shows they hit 5.39% growth in the fourth quarter of 2025.
Exactly. And they are backing that growth with a fortress balance sheet. They're holding a trade surplus of nearly $50 billion US, and foreign exchange reserves are pushing $155 billion.
Wow. So they have real cash.
Serious cash. This isn't a fragile, volatile, emerging market relying solely on backpacker dollars anymore. The government is executing what they call the Astasita structural reform agenda. It's heavily focused on downstreaming their own natural resources and maintaining strict macroeconomic stability. So the global wealth flowing into Bali, it's anchoring itself to the largest, most stable economy in Southeast Asia.
So the foundation is solid rock, not sand. But that changes the physical reality on the ground, doesn't it? I mean, if you are successfully importing tech founders, crypto wealth, and remote executives who are earning San Francisco salaries, you completely alter the infrastructure demand.
Oh, completely.
You cannot hand a bamboo hut with Apache 3G connection and a mosquito net to a crypto millionaire and expect them to stick around.
No, they'll be gone in a day. And that friction is exactly what sparked the digital nomad rewiring of the island. The demographic shift isn't just about the raw numbers, it's about the behavioral economics of these new residents.
Right.
We are looking at an estimated 40,000 digital nomads, remote workers, and wellness seekers living in Bali at any given moment. This is a massive population of people whose income is entirely globalized, but whose physical living situation is decentralized.
It's the ultimate geographic arbitrage. You earn in dollars, euros, or pounds, and you spend in Indonesian rupiah. But here is the catch, and our sources make this very clear. As more of these highly paid remote workers flood in to capture that arbitrage, the local market aggressively adjusts to absorb their disposable income.
It inflates to meet their wallets.
Exactly. The old myth of cheap Bali, where you could live like a king for $1,000 a month, that is dead and buried.
It really is. The Asia Lifestyle magazine data provides a sobering look at the 2026 reality. We are seeing 18% year-over-year rent increases in hotspots like Canggu. The market has stratified into very distinct socioeconomic tiers, and each one demands a completely different type of real estate product.
Let's actually break those tiers down, because the financial reality is staggering for anyone still holding on to that old Bali image. At the entry level, you have what they call the bootstrapper. If you are a young freelancer, or maybe you're trying to get a startup off the ground, you can survive on roughly 18.5 million to 22 million rupiah a month. That translates to about 11,000 to 3,390 US dollars.
But look at what that $1,000 actually buys you today compared to, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It buys friction.
A lot of friction.
Yeah.
I mean, at that price point, you are not getting a private villa overlooking the rice paddies. You are renting a room in a shared house. You're probably relying on a fan because running the air conditioning 24/7 will just blow your entire budget.
Absolutely.
You are eating nasi campur at the local open-air warungs. And crucially, because your shared living space is cramped and noisy, you are forced to spend money on a co-working space just to get enough quiet to jump on a Zoom call.
It is survivable, sure, but it is gritty. It is the absolute floor of the market. The real economic engine, though, kicks in at the next level, the comfortable nomad.
Yeah, this is the remote worker earning a solid Western salary, spending between $1,900 and $2,400 a month. And this budget changes the physical environment entirely.
It's a totally different lifestyle.
Night and day. Now, you are in a modern private studio or one-bedroom villa. The AC is running constantly. You have a dedicated ergonomic workspace inside your home. You hold premium memberships to elite co-working spaces like Dojo Bali or Outpost, which, by the way, run about $120 to $130 a month just for a dedicated desk.
Yeah, it adds up fast.
And you're dining at trendy Western cafes or high-end Japanese spots multiple nights a week.
And then at the absolute apex, you have the premium expat. This is the demographic those golden visas were built for. This tier is deploying anywhere from $3,165 to well over $4,400 a month. And honestly, that number scales infinitely upwards depending on how lavish the lifestyle gets.
We are talking multi-bedroom contemporary villas with full smart home integration, full-time domestic staff, private chefs, comprehensive international health insurance, and of course VIP access to massive beach clubs like Finn's or The Lawn. The capital velocity in this tier is just enormous.
It's staggering. But the crucial takeaway for the listener isn't just the personal budgets, it's how these budgets trigger what the data calls the amenities arms race. Real estate developers realized that to capture those comfortable and premium tiers, they had to fundamentally change the product itself.
Right.
A bed and a pool are no longer sufficient.
You have to build a highly curated lifestyle container. Our sources highlight that these residents demand enterprise-grade fiber internet as an absolute non-negotiable baseline. We're talking providers like BizNet or IndiHome pulling 50 to 100 megabits per second directly into what are essentially rural areas.
Think about the logistical nightmare of that for a second. You are laying enterprise fiber optics through working agricultural zones, past ancient temples, just so a software engineer can have zero latency on a server call to London.
It's surreal when you picture it.
It is, and it goes beyond digital infrastructure into physical wellness, too. The modern premium nomad demands on-site biohacking amenities. Developers are physically integrating ice baths, commercial-grade saunas, and CrossFit-style gyms into residential villa complexes.
Yeah, if your property doesn't have an ergonomic chair, a 100 Mbps connection, and a cold plunge, you are completely invisible to the most lucrative demographic on the island.
You won't get a single booking.
But this brings up a massive glaring question, and I think anyone listening would be wondering this. If Bali's becoming this expensive and landlords in places like Canggu are now demanding 2 months rent up front, which effectively kills that old month-to-month flexibility nomads used to love, why stay?
Right.
Why aren't these remote workers packing up their laptops and moving to cheaper parts of Southeast Asia?
It's the natural counter-argument, right? If
Yeah.
the whole game is geographic arbitrage, why not go find a steeper arbitrage?
Exactly.
Well, the Asia Lifestyle magazine data dives deep into this. They call it the Southeast Asia Showdown, directly comparing Bali to its two biggest regional rivals, Chiang Mai in Thailand and Da Nang in Vietnam. And the analysis of exactly why Bali wins reveals the absolute power of lifestyle branding.
Okay, let's examine those competitors. Because Chiang Mai is like the legacy heavyweight of the digital nomad world. And on paper, it looks unbeatable.
On paper, yeah.
It is 25 to 30% cheaper than Bali across every single metric. The internet infrastructure is incredibly robust. The local healthcare is world-class. And it offers this incredibly focused environment for deep, uninterrupted work.
It is the ultimate utility play. If you just want to put your head down and code, it's perfect. But Chiang Mai has a catastrophic environmental flaw, the burning season.
Right, the smoke.
Yeah. Between March and May, agricultural burning in the surrounding mountains blankets the city in this brutal, hazardous haze of PM 2.5 pollution. It physically forces the high net worth nomads to evacuate the city for a quarter of the year.
You can't live there year-round.
You really can't. Furthermore, it's landlocked. It entirely lacks the coastal aspirational lifestyle that people want to show off online.
Okay, so what about Da Nang? Because that solved the landlocked problem. It sits right on a beautiful stretch of the South China Sea. It has genuine seasons, which, some people prefer over year-round tropical humidity. And the cost of living is astonishingly low. Like, a bowl of incredible local pho costs a fraction of what you'd pay for an avocado toast in a Kanggu cafe.
Da Nang definitely wins on pure value, but it violently loses on infrastructure. It simply does not possess the dense, hyper-developed luxury ecosystem that Bali has spent a decade cultivating.
It's just not mature enough yet.
Not even close. It lacks the concentration of premium co-working spaces where venture capital deals actually happen. It lacks the massive, globally recognized beach clubs. It lacks the curated, English-speaking wellness industry.
Which brings us to the core mechanism of Bali's dominance. Bali isn't competing on price anymore. It is competing on the depth of its network effect and its brand.
Yes.
People are paying a massive premium to exist within a specific ecosystem. They want to work in the same cafe as a funded startup founder. They want to take meetings at Savaya or Atlas Beach Fest. They are paying for a highly stylized, Instagram-fueled social mobility.
That's exactly it. You have to view Bali as a branded geography. You aren't just renting a house, you are subscribing to a globally recognized lifestyle brand. In the exact same way, consumers pay a massive premium for an Apple product when a cheaper Android device has similar hardware. The global nomad pays a premium for the Bali ecosystem.
That's a great analogy.
The hardware, the beach, the sun that might exist in Da Nang, but the operating system, the network, is absolutely unparalleled in Bali.
And because this influx of wealthy remote capital is willing to pay subscription-level premiums for this brand, the real estate market has mutated to capture that cash flow. We are no longer talking about housing in any traditional sense.
No, not at all.
We are talking about the complete financialization of paradise, which leads us to the most volatile dynamic on the island right now, what the Coaco Development Group calls the Two Baileys crisis.
This is where anyone interested in global real estate really needs to pay forensic attention, because the headline data completely masks a brutal reality on the ground.
Let's drop those macro numbers first, because they are staggering. According to Investland, the median sold price for a property in Bali is roughly $299,000.
Which sounds incredibly cheap.
Right. On a global scale, compared to Sydney or London or LA, that sounds like a steal. But here's the shocker. There are currently 38,000 Airbnb listings active on the island. That represents a massive, explosive 29% surge in supply in a single year. And 87% of that entire supply is villas.
38,000 listings. That number fundamentally breaks the old investment models.
How so?
Well, 5 years ago, if you built a nice villa, you competed with the local boutique hotel down the street. Today, you are competing against an absolute ocean of private, decentralized inventory. This massive supply shock has bifurcated the market into a violent K-shape. You have two entirely different economic realities coexisting simultaneously.
And the thesis statement for this entire segment really boils down to this. Bali villas are not homes. They are yield-producing lifestyle assets. If you treat them like a home, you lose.
Exactly.
Let's look at the bottom arm of that K-shape, the bear case. This is the bottom 25% of the market.
This demographic is largely made up of amateur landlords and retail investors who bought into that old Bali myth. They purchased generic, copy-based, standalone villas, 4 walls, a roof, a standard pool, and absolutely zero unique selling proposition.
Just a basic house.
Just a house. And because they are drowning in that 29% supply surge, their occupancy rates are getting decimated, dropping to 40% or even lower.
And the yield data on these generic villas is horrific. The reports show they are generating a 0.6% cash-on-cash return.
It's basically zero.
Yeah. Think about that. You are tying up hundreds of thousands of dollars in an emerging market dealing with tropical maintenance, leaky roofs, algorithmic warfare on Airbnb, and unpredictable tourists, just to make a 0.6% return. You would literally make exponentially more money leaving that capital in a basic high-yield savings account without lifting a finger.
It really is the death of the passive amateur landlord. But then you look at the top arm of the K-shape, the bull case. The top 10% of developers and operators who understand they are not in the real estate business. They are in the hyper-optimized hospitality business.
Right. These are the professionally managed lifestyle resorts. They don't just sell you a place to sleep. They engineer a solution to the biggest pain points of the digital nomad loneliness and daily friction.
Yes.
They're building massive integrated complexes where your villa sits adjacent to a commercial-grade co-working space, a state-of-the-art gym, a spa, and a community event center.
They are keeping the nomad inside their ecosystem. And the financial delta between this model and the amateur model is night and day. These top 10% properties maintain 80% or higher occupancy year-round.
Wow.
They command premium average daily rates of $240 or more, and they are kicking out 15% to 20% gross yields.
But the most counterintuitive, fascinating piece of data from the Coco Development Group is what kind of assets are actually driving those 20% yields. If you close your eyes and imagine a luxury Bali investment, you probably picture a massive 6-bedroom sprawling mega mansion, right?
That's what everyone thinks.
But the data says the exact opposite. 1-bedroom apartments actually command the highest per square meter rate on the island.
It all comes down to ruthless unit economics and capital efficiency. A premium 1-bedroom apartment is commanding roughly $3,520 per square meter, whereas a 1-bedroom standalone villa might pull $2,480.
Why the massive premium for a smaller space? I mean, shouldn't a standalone villa be worth more?
You'd think so, but it's because of how the modern demographic uses space. The solo remote worker or the professional couple doesn't need a sprawling compound. They need a hyper-functional, beautifully designed aesthetic space that looks great on a Zoom call and is effortless to maintain.
Oh, that makes sense.
And from an investor's perspective, large family groups renting 6-bedroom villas cause massive wear and tear. They throw parties, they break things, the maintenance overhead is huge. Compact 1-bedroom assets aimed at high-earning solo professionals generate significantly higher yields per dollar invested with a fraction of the operational friction.
That is brilliant. But before any listener rushes to their bank to wire funds for a 1-bedroom yield asset, we have to talk about the massive existential risk hovering over this entire market: the regulatory crackdown.
Yes, we absolutely must talk about this.
The Wild West era of Bali real estate, where foreigners played fast and loose with the rules, is officially dead in 2026.
It is the single biggest graveyard for uneducated foreign capital. For decades, the standard operating procedure for foreigners who, by the way, cannot legally own freehold land in Indonesia was to use a nominee structure.
Right. You basically find a local Indonesian citizen, you pay them a fee, and you put their name on the official land title. Then you drop a stack of side agreements in a lawyer's office stating that you gave them the money and you actually control the asset.
And under Indonesian investment law, those side agreements are entirely, unequivocally null and void.
Wait, completely null.
Completely. The local nominee is the sole legal owner. If that nominee passes away, if they go bankrupt, or if they simply wake up one morning and decide they want to keep the multi-million-dollar villa you built on their land, you have zero legal recourse. You lose the asset.
That is terrifying.
It is. The government used to turn a blind eye to this, but in 2026, they are actively dismantling it.
So how are the smart investors, the ones pulling down those 20% yields, actually structuring their capital?
They utilize the exact corporate structure the government wants them to use, the PT-PMA. You establish a legitimate, legally compliant foreign investment company. In many sectors, including hospitality, this company can be 100% foreign-owned.
Okay.
That corporate entity then acquires the Hak Guna Bangunan, which translates to the right to build title. It is a fully protected legal corporate asset that allows you to control and build on the land for up to 80 years.
But the compliance doesn't stop at how you hold the land. It extends to how you monetize it. If you want to tap into that sweet, high-yield, short-term rental market on Airbnb, you can't just throw your property online anymore. You are legally required to hold a Ponta Quasada, a specific homestay license.
Yep.
And here's the geographical trap. You can only get this license if your land is located in a designated pink tourism zone.
Exactly. If you try to build a beautiful villa in a yellow residential zone or a green agricultural zone and you start renting it out nightly, the local Banjar, the community council, and the government authorities will simply shut you down. They will red tape the property immediately.
It's like the stock market. You used to be able to buy a broad index fund of Bali property, throw a dart at a map, buy a cheap villa, put it on Airbnb, and collect passive income.
Right.
But that era is over. Buying property in Bali today requires the active management and regulatory compliance of running a boutique hotel.
That is the perfect mental model. The passive index fund strategy yields the 0.6% return. The actively managed, legally compliant corporate strategy yields the 20%.
But I'm going to push back hard right here. We are talking about 38,000 listings, a 29% surge in supply, median occupancy dropping to 65% island-wide, and plunging to a brutal 43% in highly saturated markets like Canggu.
Yeah, the numbers are stark.
Even if you incorporate a PTPMA and build in a pink zone, isn't this the textbook definition of a massive popping bubble? I mean, if the median operator is failing and occupancy is crashing, why would any rational actor inject capital into this environment right now?
It is a totally valid, data-driven concern, but you have to separate the retail buyer from the institutional builder. It is absolutely a bubble if you are a retail buyer purchasing a generic turnkey villa at full retail price today.
Because you're buying at the top.
Exactly. If you buy a finished property right now, you are paying the developer's maximum profit margin right at the peak of a supply glut. For that buyer, it is a terrible allocation of capital.
Okay, so how does the smart money avoid the bubble?
They bypass the retail premium entirely through a build-to-rent approach. By securing the land and developing the property from the ground up themselves, they are shaving 30 to 40% off their entry costs compared to buying a finished asset.
Wow, 40%.
Yeah. That massive initial savings creates a deep margin of safety against any future yield compression or occupancy drops. Alternatively, they deploy capital into those professionally managed resort communities where massive economies of scale reduce the daily operational friction. The smart money isn't buying into the bubble. They are engineering the infrastructure that defies it.
That makes total sense. It's all about how you engineer the asset to protect your downside. But equally as important as how you engineer it is where you plant it. Because Bali is not a monolith. The geography of the island is actively fracturing into distinct financial microclimates.
It really is.
Let's take the listener on a tour of the two absolute heavyweights of the Bali investment corridors, Canggu and Uluwatu.
Together, these two microgeographies represent over 60% of all foreign property sales on the island. They are the twin engines of the entire market, but their underlying economic mechanics are wildly different.
Let's start with Canggu on the southwest coast. The data from Balitecture labels Canggu the established income play. It alone accounts for 33.5% of all sales. If you are looking for the absolute densest daily infrastructure, the best oat milk lattes, the highest concentration of fiber optic co-working spaces, the most aggressive nightlife, Canggu is the epicenter.
And because of that intense concentrated density, it maintains incredibly resilient occupancy rates. Even with the supply glut we just talked about, premium managed properties in Canggu often run at 85% occupancy or higher.
That's incredible consistency.
It is. The demand pool is exceptionally deep. You have short-term tourists, mid-term digital nomads, and long-term expats all fiercely competing for the same square footage. It provides extreme cash flow security. You know your asset will generate revenue.
But you pay an astronomical premium for that security. The land in Canggu is largely leasehold, and the prices have skyrocketed to anywhere from $70,000 to $95,000 per 100 square meters. Because your initial entry cost is so high, your yields naturally compress. Investors in Canggu are looking at a very stable but lower 10 to 15% gross yield. The explosive exponential growth phase of Canggu is firmly in the rearview mirror.
Now contrast that maturity with the rugged southern peninsula Uluwatu.
Right. Uluwatu is the high gross market. We are talking dramatic limestone clifftops, massive panoramic ocean views, world-class surf breaks, and crucially, it sits firmly within the designated pink tourism zone. Land here is significantly cheaper to enter than Canggu, running around $40,000 to $60,000 per 100 square meters.
Yet, despite those lower land costs, the unique geography and the luxury branding of the cliffs allow operators to charge significantly higher nightly rates. It's really common to see premium villas in Uluwatu commanding $300 to $500 a night. Lower land cost plus higher nightly revenue equals superior unit economics.
And the numbers bear that out perfectly. Uluwatu is generating massive 15 to 25% gross yields, and because it is earlier in its development cycle, the land itself is appreciating rapidly, seeing 15 to 25% annual capital growth compared to maybe 8 to 12% in the saturated Canggu market.
It is the classic portfolio allocation choice. Kagyu is your blue chip dividend stock. It is mature, the infrastructure is completely built out, it is highly stable, and it pays a very reliable dividend. But you aren't going to see the underlying asset double in value overnight.
In Uluwatu.
Uluwatu is your high growth tech stock. It offers higher yields, massive capital appreciation potential, but perhaps slightly more volatility and off season occupancy.
And Uluwatu has a structural moat that Kangoo completely lacks intense physical scarcity. You cannot artificially manufacture more ocean-facing clifftops. The geography literally limits the sprawl.
Exactly. And the local government is heavily utilizing that pink tourism zone designation to restrict overdevelopment.
Yeah.
They are actively trying to preserve the premium, low-density nature of the area because they know that is what justifies the $500 a night price tag.
But wait, I have a massive structural pushback here regarding the future of Uluwatu. The sources explicitly mention that President Prabowo Subianto has approved the construction of a massive $3 billion North Bali International Airport.
Yes, the new airport.
This isn't a small regional airstrip. It's backed by the China Construction Group and is designed to handle 42 million passengers annually. If Uluwatu's entire economic premise is based on scarcity, restricted zoning, and capturing the luxury market, doesn't a $3 billion mega airport on the opposite end of the island threaten to completely upend this southern concentration of wealth?
It's a fair question.
Right. Won't the capital and the tourists simply flee north?
It is a brilliant observation, but the macroeconomic analysis suggests the exact opposite outcome. The North Bali airport isn't going to destroy the luxury yields of Uluwatu. It is the exact mechanism that will save them.
Walk me through the logistics of that. How does funneling 42 million people north help the south?
You have to look at what 42 million passengers actually represents. That is mass, industrial scale, low-margin tourism. Right now, because Bali only has one major international airport in the south, all of that mass tourism, the massive tour buses, the cheap package holidays, is violently funneled through the southern corridors. It is creating the horrendous gridlocked traffic jams that Kangoo and the southern peninsula are now infamous for.
The infrastructure is just buckling under the volume.
Precisely. By building the new mega airport in the north, the government can effectively siphon off that high-volume, lower-spend mass tourism to the northern coastlines, places like Lovina and Ahmed. Those northern areas will explode into massive new speculative volume markets.
The light bulb just went off.
Right. By redirecting the sheer volume of bodies and buses away from the south, it relieves the infrastructural pressure. It actively preserves the exclusive, low-density, highly branded luxury of the southern cliffs. It prevents Uluwatu from being trampled to death by its own popularity. The north becomes the industrial volume play. The south cements itself as the ultra-premium, high-yield sanctuary.
So preserving the brand of Bali, that unique blend of spirituality, aesthetic beauty, and curated luxury, is the absolute paramount directive for maintaining these high yields. If Bali just paves over its rice paddies and turns into a concrete jungle of high-rises like Miami, Singapore, or Bangkok, the geographic premium completely vanishes. The arbitrage dies.
100%.
And that brings us to the final and perhaps most fascinating macro-level evolution of this deep dive. How Bali physically forces billions of dollars of global capital to bow to its ancient identity.
This is where the intersection of high finance, yield optimization, and deep culture becomes a physical reality. It's fascinating.
Let's introduce a crucial physical constraint that dictates the entire real estate market. In Bali, by law, no building can be taller than 15 meters, roughly the height of a mature coconut tree.
Which is such a unique limitation.
It is. This single unyielding law immediately and violently separates Bali from every other major development boon on the planet. You cannot build vertical density. You cannot build a 40-story luxury condo tower to maximize your square footage.
It is a massive constraint on capital. It forces developers to build horizontally. This inherently accelerates land scarcity, drives up the price of the remaining plots, and fundamentally maintains the low-density, sprawling aesthetic that justifies the luxury price tag to the consumer. But the constraints go so much deeper than just how high you can stack bricks.
The academic study on contextual sustainability we have in our sources is absolutely mind-blowing on this point. When a global developer builds a green or sustainable building in London, New York, or Dubai, they use global certifications like LED.
Right, checking the efficiency boxes.
Exactly. They focus on technical efficiency, solar panels, gray water recycling, HVAC efficiency, carbon footprints. It is a purely technical engineering exercise.
But in Bali, technical efficiency is merely the baseline. The local government requires an integration of sociocultural values into the very architecture itself. It is a concept called contextual green building.
All right, so developers who are pouring millions into these PMA corporate structures, desperately trying to hit their 20% yields, are legally required to adhere to the Triheta philosophy.
Yes, the core Balinese concept.
This is the ancient foundational Balinese concept of harmony between humans and nature, humans and other humans, and humans and the divine. You have to physically build this spiritual philosophy into your yield-producing financial asset.
And the regulations are incredibly specific. They require the use of traditional Balinese architectural principles. Your building must have a specific base body head structural composition, mimicking the human form and cosmic order.
You can't just build whatever you want.
Not at all. You must utilize distinctive traditional roof shapes. You must source local materials like bamboo and specific volcanic stones and integrate precise ornamental designs. You cannot just drop a glass and steel brutalist box onto a cliff. The building must visually and theoretically spiritually belong to Bali.
Okay, I have to ask the cynical question here. Is this actually working? I mean, you have global hedge funds, crypto billionaires, and ruthless foreign developers pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into highly financialized algorithmic yield assets. But the local government is forcing them to wrap these financial vehicles in traditional Balinese aesthetics and ancient spiritual philosophy.
It's quite the clash.
It is. Can a local culture actually survive this level of intense, weaponized financialization? Or is this just elaborate state-mandated greenwashing to make high-end tech executives feel spiritually aligned while they rent a $500 a night villa?
It is a profound, incredibly tense dynamic, and frankly, if you look closely at the developments, it's a bit of both. There is absolutely an element of aesthetic greenwashing by developers who view the Triheta philosophy as just another compliance box to check off to get their permits.
Right, just doing the bare minimum.
Exactly. But if we pull back and look at the macro conclusion of 2026, the very fact that a local government in an emerging market has the leverage to successfully enforce these aesthetic and spiritual rules onto global capital is revolutionary.
Explain that macro conclusion. When we aggregate the visas, the nomads, the yields, and the coconut tree limits, where does all of this data lead us?
It leads us to the realization that we have officially entered the era of the distributed luxury living city. Think about the last century of wealth generation. Global capital was deeply geographically confined to traditional financial centers.
Like London or New York?
Yes. If you wanted to be a serious player, if you wanted to access the global elite, you had to physically live in London, New York, Hong Kong, or Tokyo.
You had to be geographically tethered to the physical headquarters of the investment banks, the stock exchanges, and the massive multinational corporations. Geography was destiny.
But the rise of remote work, the explosion of borderless crypto wealth, and a fully globalized digital economy have completely severed the link between where you earn your capital and where you deploy your capital.
Which changes everything.
Everything. The ultra-wealthy, the venture-backed tech founders, and the new, highly paid remote working class are no longer trapped in the miserable winters and high taxes of Manhattan or London. They are distributing themselves into highly curated, hyper-amenitized lifestyle hubs around the planet.
And Bali has positioned itself as the prototype for this entirely new type of city.
It is the apex predator of this new geographic asset class. Bali has successfully managed to merge a deeply authentic, globally recognized cultural identity, its spirituality, its natural beauty, its aesthetic branding, with incredibly hard institutional-grade financial infrastructure.
It really has it all.
It does. It has the golden visas to legally let the capital in. It has the PMA corporate laws to fiercely protect that capital. It has the managed villa ecosystems and the 100 melee fiber optics to generate 20% yields on that capital. And it has the strict zoning and 15-meter height limits to ensure the aesthetic brand never gets diluted.
It is completely re-engineering its entire economy to service a decentralized global citizenry. It is proving that a location doesn't need to be a traditional center of commerce or manufacturing to attract the highest tiers of global wealth. It just needs to offer the highest possible quality of life, legally protected, digitally connected, and highly branded.
It is a masterclass in how geography adapts to the digital age. They literally took a tourism economy and upgraded it into a residency economy.
Let's summarize the incredible journey we've taken you on today, because we have covered a massive amount of ground, from macroeconomics to local zoning laws. We have seen how Bali transformed from a transient tourist destination, the island of cheap beers and two-week holidays, into a mature, data-driven, highly financialized residency market.
We track the underlying macroeconomic strength of Indonesia, that 5.11% GDP growth, and the aggressive golden visa policies that actively shifted the country from border enforcement to investment facilitation.
We broke down the granular reality of the digital nomad influx. We saw how the demand for enterprise internet, biohacking amenities, and deep work infrastructure fundamentally rewired the real estate landscape, sparking a relentless amenities arms race.
We analyzed the two Baileys crisis and the violent K-shaped market, revealing how the easy, passive Airbnb income of the amateur landlord has been utterly crushed, replaced by the sophisticated, professionally managed, 20% yielding lifestyle resort.
We explored the microgeographies of capital, comparing the dense, blue-chip stability of Canggu against the high-growth, cliff-top scarcity of Uluwatu. We saw how a $3 billion mega airport in the north is being strategically deployed to siphon off mass tourism, ironically preserving the exclusive luxury of the south. And finally, we saw how strict cultural and zoning laws forcing developers to build horizontally and integrate ancient spiritual philosophies have forged Bali into an irreplaceable premium global brand.
It is the total financialization of a lifestyle.
And so, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to chew on as you log off and go about your day. We started by talking about how we like our geography to be static, easily categorized, and comforting, like an old photograph. But if a remote tropical island in Southeast Asia can completely re-engineer its entire economy, its legal frameworks, and its physical architecture to become a decentralized hub for global wealth, tech founders, and lifestyle capital, well, wait, I shouldn't say ... I mean, all while forcing that immense, ruthless wave of global money to physically bow with ancient aesthetic rules, what does this mean for the future of the traditional city?
It poses an existential threat to the legacy urban model.
As your income becomes completely, totally unmoored from your geography, will your next hometown be a place you were born or a city where you happen to find a job? Or will your hometown simply be a highly curated, distributed lifestyle brand, complete with its own visas, its own yields, and its own culture that you simply choose to subscribe to? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Keep your eyes open, keep analyzing the data, and always keep questioning the changing world around you. We'll see you next time.